I love that new feature. So we're going to start recording now, and I'm actually going to let the panel introduce themselves, but tonight we have a student panel on. We thought, what a great way to kick off the year. Hear from the people that we serve directly. That's what CAGT is here for. We are here to make sure that gifted students in the state of Colorado get a fair shake and they get the resources that they need. It's our mission and vision and our drive behind everything that we do. So why not, from their mouths to our ears, let's hear what they have to say about the state of gifted education in Colorado. So I am hoping not to do much of the talking tonight. I'm hoping that these students here will have a lot to share and a lot of input and personal experience that they can share with us this evening. So really quickly, I'd like to go around the screen and I'm going to just say your name and then please introduce your full name and your district, your grade, and we'll kind of move around the screen so everybody can kind of get to know your name before we start in on the questions. So Jared, I'm going to start with you first. If you would please go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Jared Vargas. I am a senior this year, and I attend Vista Academy, which is part of DPS.
All right, thank you. Kaya.
Hi, I'm Kaya Crawford. I'm a senior this year as well, attending North Fork High School in Delta County School District 50J.
And Dana.
Hi, my name is Dana Coe, and I am a junior at Pine Creek High School at D20 in Colorado Springs.
Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia Kleiss. I'm a senior at Fort Morgan High School, and I'm from Morgan County, RE3.
And Grace.
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm from Durango High School in the 9R district, and I am a rising senior.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you all here tonight. I really appreciate you joining us this evening. I know that with going back to school, lives are getting busy again. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your evenings, your busy junior, senior evenings to chat with us. We are going to just cut right to the chase. And we're going to go right to the big meat of, why we kind of wanted to do this student panel. And I'd love to know about your experience as a gifted student in your district or in the state of Colorado, and what worked, what you like, and kind of what do you wish you would have had available to you? What kind of are your hopes for kids that are coming up under you that maybe things will change? What kind of, just let me know what's good, what's not, and we'll kind of move around the room. So I'm going to go the opposite way. So Grace, you were the last one to speak, so I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Awesome. Yeah, no. So as far as being a gifted student goes, it was really nice when I was younger. I feel like I got a lot of support. I got the connections I needed and the resources I needed to kind of pursue more rigorous education. But as I got into high school and even just middle school, I felt like the accountability aspect just disappeared. Like we'd create these ALPs and then they'd kind of sit on a shelf getting dusty all year. And I think that's even been magnified more because of COVID. Like I haven't seen my ALP since before COVID and I don't know what's on it. So I can't really take advantage of that. And that's probably the main sort of critique I'd have for gifted education is it really lacks that accountability piece, which prohibits students from taking advantage of the opportunities that it offers.
Okay, Olivia.
I definitely agree with Grace. I think the strongest parts of my gifted education were when I was first identified. So mainly in my primary school years, I really enjoyed the opportunities I had to actually learn more than what was actual school curriculum. I could get interested I was exposed to a lot of science earlier than the average student, and I enjoyed that because that's one of my favorite subjects. And yeah, I would say going into middle school and into high school, it really just kind of plummets. You don't get as much support, and you also don't have teachers who understand what gifted is for you. Like a lot of my teachers haven't challenged me, and that's been probably one of my biggest complaints is I haven't had the opportunity to explore my education more.
Thanks for sharing. Dana.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I actually really like about my district's gifted education system is that despite it being a relatively large public school, we do have one gifted coordinator, and usually it's not what you'd expect, that the gifted coordinator really gets to know the students on an individual level. But my school actually does offer a lot of great gifted counseling services. And so for students that do want to seek out these services and do want to talk to these gifted coordinators, they can just send them an email and like set up an appointment, and it's really quick and easy. And I would say that the majority of our gifted program does feel relatively connected at our school district. But on the flip side of that, I definitely do agree with Grace and Olivia in that at high school, there's a lot less structure involved with gifted education. And so in elementary school, middle school, we had like specifically designed gifted classes to where you'd basically be with other gifted students and you'd all kind of be in this collective learning experience. But whereas in high school, it's really, it just comes down to whether you want to take these honors and AP courses, which I think works for some students, but not as well for other ones.
Awesome. Thanks, Dana. Okay, Kaya.
For me, gifted education has been hit or miss where I live. I attended a Montessori school for 2 years in which they had enrichment. So they would pull you out for an hour once a week to do gifted and talented work, but that was elementary school. So I agree with Grace and Olivia that really the accountability in the ALP is all you have once you reach high school. And there aren't a ton of resources for gifted students.
All right, thanks, Kaya. Jared, last but not least, share how your experience has been.
Yeah, so my experience, honestly, I go to a small school. It's something like 300 kids, and it's 6th through 12th grade. So it's a small school. And even from just my regular teachers, I had a lot of support, especially lately. And I know you guys were talking about COVID and online classes and stuff like that. And I remember like after class, just talking with my teachers for hours and just having like that connection and that support from them. And that was good. And as far as like the gifted and talented program exclusively, it was like all my other peers said, as you're younger, it's just more simple, easier per se, but in high school it does get more difficult. And I feel like just the age of the person, so growing up as a teen, puberty, hormones, all of this, it also has a big impact on your gifted abilities and how you proceed with high school and education in general.
So a really good point, Jared, and something I think I've noticed in some of my students for sure. Jared, you kind of have a great segue into what we're going to talk about next. And I think it seems like there's some very common threads, and I'll just kind of recap what we just said. It sounds like most of you would like a little bit more individualized attention and structure within your gifted program at the high school level. And so, I might come back to you if we have some time at the end. So it gives you a little bit of think time, given, the state of funding and the amount of people available to support you, what might be some possible solutions? Because here's the deal. I think I have exhausted all my options, but sometimes students have way better ideas than we do. So I might come back to you at the end if we have some time about maybe some possible solutions that you could feel more supported at the high school level. But I want to give you some think time on that. And I want to talk a little bit about what Jared spoke of, is about how the online learning environment, you mentioned, Grace, as well, that the ALP kind of like especially went by the wayside during COVID as far as your personalized learning plan. What was the online learning experience like for you? And I mean, some gifted students, and I'll just kind of preface this with some gifted students felt like they were able to work at a faster pace and had more time to pursue other interests, whereas so that it was a benefit, whereas others felt isolated and unsupported. So we might have some very different experiences here. So I'd love for you to share. And we're going to just start with Dana for that one.
So for online learning at my school, I was fortunate enough to where our district did do hybrid for a good majority of the year. And so I think personally that did work for me because at home I could more learn individually and kind of like take learning at my own pace. But then at the same time, I did still get like an in the classroom setting to kind of help with that. But I think with online learning in general, I feel that a lot of gifted students kind of have to take education into their own hands, which, like you said, may come easier to some students than to others. And so I think going into this next year, that's something that teachers should definitely keep in mind in case we do have to like return online.
Yes. In that event, for sure. Thank you, Dana. Grace. We may have lost.
Yes.
Oh,
So being
Oh, Grace, you're cutting out. So I'm gonna. All right, Grace, I'm gonna cut to Kaya while we're you get to renew your connection. Hey, the struggles of full internet for sure. Technology. Speaking of online schooling, how many people had glitchy Zoom meetings? Raise your hand. Grace, hang in there, okay? We're gonna come right back to you. We'll let you refresh your signal. If you need to pop out and pop back in, feel free to do that to refresh your signal. Kaya, we're gonna talk to you and then we'll pop back around and hopefully Grace his signal will resolve itself.
So I feel really fortunate. Last year we started out in a hybrid system for about 2 months, but most of my school year was actually in person. So being from a rural community, that's made possible from smaller class sizes. But I agree with what Dana was saying about how, like, with the online portion, we were held accountable for what we had to do, and not everybody is going to be at the same level moving forward. And that's something I've seen this year alone is we have people in all different levels while learning. And I think there just needs to be some more work put into the students who need the extra support because they didn't have the support system they needed when they were online.
Good points, Kaya. Jared, you kind of spoke to it a little bit. Would you expand on your experience? I know it sounds like you had a lot of one-on-one time with your teachers, but what else about the experience was pros and cons?
Well, my online school experience wasn't the best, I have to admit. At the time, and I'm not saying well, yeah. So basically, I lost like so much concentration. Just like you said, you mentioned this, based on mental health. I lost basically all concentration. I got a really bad stutter. Like people thought I was born with a stutter, and so like my peer said, with online, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry. Online, you're held more accountable for your own education, and so for me, it was really difficult to just even debate more basic things in life, like not even school, just were like really hard, and so school made it even worse. And like I remember for a good portion of it, like just showing up to class online was hard. And so in the topic of how can teachers and parents help the students, is making sure that they are able to just go along with it, because sometimes you won't even notice that what they're doing or not, especially when it's online, that, or they, and so they'll be like, no, yeah, I did, or whatever, but like you don't really know. And so it's just something to watch out for, I think, as parents, as teachers, and to see how they're doing. And I know this year it's going to be more in person, and so I feel like it'll be better. But in the case of that we go back online, we just I think it's just keeping an eye out and seeing how they're holding up with, like my peers said, having their own accountability for their education.
So more like definitely more frequent check-ins, and not just about their academics, but about like their like emotional state. How are they doing with all this? And yeah, not just being like a blank spot on a screen, because I don't know about how many of you joined that you had your cameras on, because most of the classes I was in, cameras were off. So it's definitely hard to kind of gauge where students are at with that. And I think you have a great point, Jared, about those check-ins, especially after the online environment. Olivia, I know you, and just because I know you personally, I know you've been working on getting a mental health student mental health club and support organization in your school. So can you tell us a little bit about your online experience and how that might have impacted you academically, but also with mental health?
Okay, for sure. So, my school, it was kind of chaotic last year. We started hybrid, but that wasn't really working out for me at first. I don't have the best like Wi-Fi connection, and I like to really stay like involved with my classes. I like to have class discussions. That's the best way I learn. So just kind of watching and being ignored by teachers wasn't working the best. So it was arranged so I could go in person. And then as soon as it was arranged, our school was put like everybody was sent back, and then I was actually put into quarantine due to some of my like school activities, and it was like back to back. So I was out of school for 4 months, and it was so stressful. And then as soon as that ended, my school was just set remote, and we were remote until January. And then we went back to hybrid, and it was very chaotic. Nothing was very consistent with my education. So I was really stressed out. I was not having the best time. I wasn't in the best place mentally or emotionally. And I don't think that really showed. I had been taking a lot of classes. I had been staying on top of all those classes, but I felt probably at my worst. And I was able to kind of bounce back. I was able to get back onto my feet. I have a really good support system, but I realized that not a lot of people have that. I'm very lucky when it comes to that. I'm very lucky that I have a good family. I have a lot of good friends, and I have a lot of good support at school. And realizing that, I decided that we need to offer at my school and pretty much everywhere, especially in my community, as a rural community, we don't have a lot of mental health services. I realized that's something I could provide. So one of my classes that I have, we were kind of given an opportunity to do a passion project. And so one of my friends and myself decided to start a mental health club. And we looked into a lot of organizations that would be willing to help us start one. And we decided to work with Our Minds Matter to create a club. And that's actually really going to start rolling this year. And that's something that I've taken a lot of pride in, that I've really wanted to put a lot of effort into to like start and let it continue, because it is my senior year. I won't be able to see where this club goes really, but I want to at least start it and give the opportunity to other students and to the rest of my community to like grow this and work together and be supportive and kind of shed light on what it's like. Because I feel like as gifted students, people kind of forget that we're still human and that we still have our areas where we struggle. So yeah.
Great point. And that's exactly what our executive director, Nanette, wrote, was just people probably think, oh, they're gifted, they'll be fine. But I feel like that's definitely something I've seen, is that gifted kids need support, and not just academic support. It's not just all about academics. Grace, thank you for joining us again. I know we were glitchy. That was great. We roll with the punches here. So Grace,
sure.
can you share your experience in the online setting and what your experience was, pros and cons?
Yeah, but before I do that, I kind of want to build off what Olivia said, because I think she raises a really good point, that it's really easy for gifted students to kind of hide in plain sight, because a lot of us are used to getting good grades, kind of skating by in our classes. We can do that and still have our mental health deteriorate. So I think more of an effort needs to be focused on gifted students' mental health, particularly in the remote environment. As far as my experiences go, I had a pretty easy time last year. I think it's kind of an introversion extroversion thing. I'm an introvert. I didn't need too much more support, and it really gave me sort of the space I needed to pursue things and extracurriculars that I hadn't gotten to, like the time to do in the past. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good for my growth.
Classic problem. Forgot to unmute myself. I think some of the things we have to take away from this is that, Olivia, out of this, you're understanding the importance of mental health. Jared, you make some amazing points about that personal connection and building relationships with students and how important that is. You all talked about how isolation could be a challenge with mental health. Kaya, did we get to you? I think we did. Okay. And I think lessons learned, and I do think, you know, as teachers, we all have our own perspective, but you really kind of nailed it. And I think relationships are so important. And it seems like that's kind of also what you're craving as high school gifted students, is relationships with someone who will understand where you're going, what your long-term goals are, and how we can support you to get there. It's so great to hear that. It's so great to hear that kind of verbalized by you. We're going to go on to another question, but I'd like to, we'll kind of stay on those veins. We talked about mental health. We're already kind of hitting a lot of these questions that we had in mind just organically, which is awesome. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to kind of riff from here because we did kind of hit a whole lot of what we were going to talk about tonight. Given gifted education in the state of Colorado, we are one of the states that's fortunate enough to have funding for that, but we're not necessarily fully funded in the way that a special education might be, right? I mean, how many of you know your gifted coordinator has a lot of people on their caseload, or a lot of people to work with across multiple schools? And also, you guys mentioned like the lack of programs, and this is kind of your chance to say, like, what can we do? What creative and unique solutions might you have for things that we educators could do to improve your experience as gifted students, especially in the secondary level, where you all mentioned feeling like a little bit like there's a disconnect in services and support. So what are some creative solutions? What would you like to see? What do you want from us, parents, teachers, your administrators? I'd love to hear from you. I think that's where the best ideas will come from. So we're gonna, Grace, you went last time, so you're gonna go first this time. Oh, now you have no sound. We're gonna come back to you. I won't make you go last again. So fix your sound and we'll see you in a minute. Let's go. Dana, have you ever started a conversation? I think I'll start with you.
I think I started last time.
Oh, okay. Well then, Kaya, how about you?
Okay, yeah. So resources that we really need, this is just a rural community theme, I think, is just the mental health resources. We have one guidance counselor to handle 300 something students, and gifted students need a lot more support. I don't think it should be up to the student alone to find the challenges and resources they need. Because for me, like this year, I wanted to take a concurrent enrollment class. It was up to me to find the program. It was up to me to find the class. And I just wish that overall there were more resources and more guidance for gifted students and everything. And instead of being like, oh, just join this new club, there were things geared towards gifted students. So when I was in elementary school, my school district did a gifted and talented showcase. So students throughout the year worked on these projects, these passion projects, and we presented them at that showcase. Well, that doesn't exist anymore, but I think it would be amazing to see just what the gifted community within my school district can do to create something together.
I love the idea of a gifted showcase. Can I steal that? That's really cool. Thanks, Kaya. Great idea. Let's go, Jared.
Yeah, so it's about resources that we could have, right?
Mm-hmm. Like to see.
Honestly, sorry?
Just things that you'd like to see for it as a high school student. What would you have liked to have available for you?
Oh yeah, well, I relate to I'm bad at names honestly, but I relate to a person few people ago said that it was upon them to take it onto their own hands, and I felt personally with that just because I feel like for at least a year, at least mentally, I've been on my own, and so teachers noticed how like I wasn't much of myself or anything like that, but it was upon to take it onto my own to figure out, well, what do I need to do to resolve this basically. And fortunately I was good at that and I figured it out. I'm not saying I'm like doing good by any means, but just maybe not having the pressure strictly on the student, just because I know that maybe just because I did it, not obviously not everybody is like that. And so some people, if they don't know what to do, they'll just kind of go into their little cocoon, and then if nobody digs them out, they won't really get out. And so I feel like it's important for teachers and parents to um see like, well, what can I do for him, you know? And it basically just narrows down into that. What um like I said, teachers and parents can do for you to not have the pressure on the student of how are they going to resolve either academically or mentally, emotionally, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, maybe build a bit better network of communication support, so you feel like
And
you've got a safety net for sure. Grace, is your sound working?
I don't know, is it?
Yay!
Fantastic. So I kind of agree with what's been said, but to sort of add to that, I understand the funding constraints. So I think it sort of falls on teachers a little bit. I think if they're aware of like what's in students' ALPs, because I feel like the point of the gifted program is like these students have accommodations so that they can achieve sort of the level of academics and the level of extracurriculars that they need to. And I think if teachers are aware of that, they can support students in, I guess, reaching those goals easier, I guess, because if they're not even aware of it, then they can't do anything to help out. And in my experience, I don't think teachers read ALPs or they're even, I don't know, familiar with what's in them. So I think that would be a good first step. And I don't know if this is all districts or just my experience, but I don't really even know who my gifted coordinator is. Like, if I was to like have a question about my ALP or something, I wouldn't know who to reach out to. I'd probably do my academic advisor, but to me, there's not one clear person that I reach out to for help or support. And I think that's really important. So those are the two main things.
And I think you make some great points about the ALPs that I think is a gripe that teachers and gifted coordinators also have, is that awareness of not just like, so Olivia is my student, right? And I know Olivia's goals, but the teachers aren't always aware of what those are. And sometimes they can't access the ALP, or they don't know where to access the ALP and those kind of things. And so I think I wrote that down. So I'm making a goal for myself this year to make sure that I meet with teachers about our kiddos' long-term ALP goals, so that maybe we can have a little more support. We're going to jump to Dana, and then we'll hit Olivia. So Dana, what are your unique solutions?
Yeah, I think personally, I would love to see a tag-specific class at our schools. I know that during like elementary school and middle school, we had a lot of enrichment classes. Like, for example, in my middle school, we had one tag coordinator, and he ran a gifted and talented literacy class, to where instead of going to regular literacy classes, we would go to his class and read like classics as well as other like challenging literature, which everyone at my school loved. And I know that last year at our school, an idea was being thrown around about adding a gifted and talented specific study hall, so that if these students needed more help with their homework or more of like a challenging environment with that, they could have their peers who are also gifted and talented and a teacher who's also experienced to kind of guide them through the rest of their classes. And I actually really like that idea. Our gifted coordinator kind of switched these past few years, so I'm not sure what's going on with that at my school, but I think that in like the rest of the districts around Colorado, that could be something that teachers do consider.
Very great ideas. I love that. Olivia, share your
Okay, I definitely agree that our ALPs are being like not seen at all. I don't think I've had really any teachers that have mentioned to me any of my goals or have found a way to incorporate any of my goals in. So that's definitely something I'd like to see happen, because we do spend time, at least my mom and I spend time thinking about what I want to do, what I want to achieve, what I need to work on. We've always done that my entire gifted career, I guess you could say. And I also think we do need some kind of gifted showcase. I love seeing people's ideas, and there are so many wonderful ideas that I hear from my peers. And I think it'd be amazing if we could just kind of see what we think up. I don't know. I love collaboration. I love discussion, and I would like to see more of that in my district. I think that's one of the reasons I like one of my particular teachers. It's an English teacher that I've had last year and I'm taking again this year. It's because she's actually challenged me and she's found ways to open up discussions with everybody in the class. And that's like my favorite thing. It makes me so happy. So yeah, if we could see more of that, if we could see more collaboration, more communication, and like actual acknowledgement of our plans, our goals, I think it'd be a lot easier for a lot of us to kind of thrive and not have to challenge ourselves all the time.
Awesome. Okay, so I think I'm taking notes, copious notes, like guys, like I've got a list of to-dos now. And I hope other educators on here also have a list of to-dos. There were a couple people in the comments, so I'm going to kind of go back to the comments and just see some of the things they said and stem off a little bit of conversation from there, because it is 5:36 and I want to honor your time. I know you're busy. I don't know if school started for you or not, but some of you might have homework or extracurriculars or like, you know, dinner. So we are going to jump up to Melissa Mackey. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Trying to actually find another, there's maybe somebody else, another question, I'm trying to find it, but maybe while I'm looking for that, we'll talk about Melissa Mackey's comment. She said students often feel and think deeply about life and social justice. And, you know, with given a lot of like the events of the last, I don't know, kind of since you've been in high school, there's been a lot going on in our world, in the United States, but in our world that have brought to light some social justice issues. And without getting too political, what, and I know that's hard to say because I know a lot of times we have very strongly held beliefs, especially as gifted people, because we think deeply about these things. But what outlets do you have in your, other than, we talked about mental health, what outlets do you have within your school or your community if you are passionate about social justice, or if your peers are passionate about social justice? What outlets do you have in your district? And only feel free to share if you're comfortable with this, or if you you know, have something to share. We don't need to go all the way around, but kind of just unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I am really passionate about social justice and stuff like that. In sort of the rural communities, there are not a lot of outlets or opportunities for me to pursue that at all. So I've had to kind of pursue internships with, you know, political representatives, and I've really had to sort of approach that on my own and kind of explore it on my own, because the school and the gifted program, there's just nothing available there for us. And I'm not sure if it's the same in the metro areas.
Olivia, let's jump to you because you're also rural, and then we'll chat, and Kaya, and then we'll chat with Jared and Dana if they have something to share about any opportunities they have in the urban areas. So Olivia.
Okay, yeah, I agree. There's not a whole lot that anybody can really do. I mean, there are some, not really at our high school, but at a local community college, there are some people who will set up like protests or like kind of rallies. If you are really passionate about something, you can go join and they kind of spread that. And obviously that like that will, they'll invite anybody from the community, anybody at the high school. So there is that. And there are maybe a few odd teachers or advisors who you could talk to about something. If you're really upset with the way the world is, you can have somebody who you can confide in. That's not really common in my experience, but there are a few that I can go to. There are a few people in, I guess, my support system. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to do a lot of things besides, I mean, there is legislative day, so you can, if you have the opportunity. I've done that a few times, and I know a few of my peers do that quite often. So that's another thing, but other than that, I can't think of much.
Thanks for the legislative day plug, Olivia. That's a CAGT event for sure. And I know many of you have attended that and find that valuable. Kaya, do you have anything to share about your experience in a rural setting?
So in the town over from where I go to school, there's this nonprofit called the Learning Council. And what they do is they educate our community because our community is really small and very one-sided. So they work to educate the youth through discussions like the one we're having right now. And they have a library full of authors who are people of color for students to go check out books and just educate themselves. But one thing that I found isn't really within my own community, but I am a part of COSLI, which is the Colorado Student Leadership Institute. And I just went there this last summer, and it was truly amazing to meet all these like-minded students from around Colorado and just have these discussions with them. So I think even though like my community doesn't have a ton of resources, finding peers from multiple perspectives and just talking to them really does a lot in the social justice area.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaya. Jared, what has been your experience around social justice in your community and your school district?
Yeah, well, I recall, I don't know if it was last year, the year before that, like teachers went on strike, and even the students were able to be a part of that. And I feel like it was just good that we knew that, and I feel like it was, at least for my school, the teachers could be there for the teachers could be there for their students, and the students could be there for their teachers, because like we rallied with them, we basically protested. And I feel like if there is an agreed upon social injustice, that we are willing to take that into our own hands and do what is in our power to basically make that better.
Awesome. So just, maybe just more support to feel empowered to do that social justice. It sounds like you had some opportunities. That's really cool. Dana, do you have anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think that even coming from more of an urban district of Colorado, that at my school, we don't really have too much of kind of like a structured outlet for social justice. I think especially being high school students, it's not too expected of us to really be engaged in these issues, which I think is definitely a false assumption in our generation, to where most of us do care about what's going around the world. And most of us do have some issues that we're passionate about. And fortunately at my school, even if my school doesn't necessarily encourage students to take part in politics or social justice, they don't silence voices either. And so I think individual students at our school have definitely found their own kind of like outlets to express these opinions. And so, for example, I do speech and debate, and I have a lot of friends who also do the same. And we all kind of share our experiences and own stories through that. And my school has a really great like graphic design and arts program, to where a lot of our students are making these like incredible pieces detailing these issues. And then these are like hung up all around our school. And so I think something that schools can really focus on is, rather than providing a necessary like structured program, I think they can just do their part to encourage students to express themselves and also just share what they have to, even if it's at a smaller level.
Awesome. Dana, I love the idea of like art pieces being displayed around the building instead of just like down by the art room, but like all around the building, so that people can see student expression. I think that's so great. I think I hit everybody. I love talking, and Olivia knows this. I love talking with her about social justice issues and things like that. I think, and I think, Dana, you're right. It was a Dana that says an incorrect assumption to assume that you're not involved in political stuff. I think I have a 13-year-old who's very aware of what's going on. And when I was 13, trust me, I had no idea. So I think it is, your generation does seem to be a little bit more aware and involved, which is an incredible thing and an asset that we should be, as educators, I believe that we should be harnessing and like feeding that need to be involved, which is incredible. We have one last question. And then we're going to get to a couple questions that were offered by through the survey. Quickly, Joanne asked, in terms of building relationships and getting more support and resources, I'm curious if you'd like to see more resources in school, basically in school, after school, or outside of school, that what would work best for you as far as mental health support resources, or just more time to like bond with peers or with your gifted leaders. Do you feel like it needs to happen within the school day, or is that something you will seek out after school? We all know we're often very busy. So what would work best for you? And we'll just go around really quickly and kind of get an idea of like what your preference is, where that would happen. So Jared, within the school day or after school?
Yeah, so I would go on the after school part, just because I know I've done stuff during school, not necessarily mental health related or anything like that, but you know, you get out of class and it's like, oh, what's this and that, and like questions start arising. And I personally never feel ashamed or anything of the sorts of saying what's going on, but I could understand of other students that might not want to necessarily have it be known what they're doing, especially within peers, you know, because like they say, kids be kids, right? And so I feel like it's something that it can be set up from your school. You know, you could find the resources in your school and the counselors, the teachers, the people that you trust. But once it comes down to the activity that you're going to be doing to help you on that, I believe it should be done after school.
I'm seeing some head nods from some of you. Anybody else feel that we need to offer it within the school day? No, everybody wants it after school or in some kind of other capacity. Does anybody have anything to add to Jared's comments about when those supports and resources would be better available to you?
Yeah, I think that having support is fantastic, but at the same time, I also feel that it shouldn't take away from instructional time. Just because, especially with the past year, that's something that we've severely lacked. And so having as much like one-on-one time with teachers is important. So I feel like these after school resources would be more beneficial in that they don't take away from like teacher student time.
It's like every teacher's dream to hear that, like, don't take instructional time away. Awesome. Okay, so we have one more question, and I think this is a great one to wrap up on. Okay, and it's a big one. This is Anil from Ignacio. She's a member of CAGT, and we answered kind of her other question about like outside personal interests and that kind of stuff. But what does your intuition tell you is the most pressing need in our school system for preparing young people? It's like a big one. What is our most pressing need within our system of preparation for young people for like the real world? You're all juniors and seniors. You're kind of at the apex of your K-12 career. And you just unmute yourself when you're ready, because I know you might need some think time. Grace, you've unmuted yourself. You're ready to rock and roll.
I think for the gifted program in particular, I think there is some side effects that just haven't been looked into in enough depth. Like there's Carol Dweck's idea of like a fixed mindset, like gifted kids are textbook for developing something like that. There's like a weird amount of gifted kids that struggle with like perfectionism, self-worth issues. And I do think there's some weird issues that should be investigated more, just to ensure that all gifted students, like we're really preparing them for the future and for success.
Awesome. That's actually excellent points. Anybody else ready to share what they think is the most pressing need? I'm jotting these down too, Grace.
Yeah, so I think that it's honestly, one is like knowing what the student actually wants, because I know that in the past, we'll just put it simply, in my high school experience, I've changed like career paths that I wanted to do a good 3-4 times. And so I think it's crucial that, and of course, like it is high school, you're still young, like you don't have to choose when you're a freshman, like, oh, what are you gonna do? Because that is something that I did see a lot in school, be like, all right, well, you guys are in high school now, so what are you gonna do when you graduate? And a lot of us are, I don't know, right? And and so I feel like just having the knowledge of whenever they're ready, like whenever they know, because like the question said, what's your intuition say, right? And you can be passionate about something, but I feel like it's intuitive where you're like, well, at least for me, you know, like when you actually think about it, because so I'll just give you an example. I was part of school, we went into Front Range Airport, we were flying small aircraft, and I looked into it, you know, being a pilot is a good job. And I was like, yeah, this is something I want to do, right? And I started pursuing it. I went in the route of getting my private pilot's license just to work my way up. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm a very active person. And yeah, you might be like, oh yeah, flying an airplane, that's cool. But when you think about it, it's like, I'm just gonna be basically driving all day just in the sky. And it's gonna be like a regular job, right? You're doing it, obviously you have your days off, everything, but it's just a full job, just driving. And I was like, yeah, there's money, yeah, like it's gonna be right for someone, but not for me. And I mean, I really did the process after school. I remember stressing because I was doing ground school online. It was just videos after videos of you know, the mechanics and everything about flying an aircraft, you know. And so I put a lot of energy into that, but like the question said, I just intuitively thought, I'm like, I can definitely do this. Like I could get myself even deeper into it, get my private pilot's license, but I already know that that's not what's gonna do it for me. And so I feel like once the student actually knows what they're gonna do, it's important for then the teachers or the parents to find the resources to do what to go along with it, you know. And also not only that, but just the simple fact of figuring out what the student wants to do, because that's the majority of it. Once you know, then yeah, but you don't necessarily want to be like, oh, this is what you're going to do, all right, let's do it, and this and this and this, and kind of like how I did. And then turns out that the student doesn't even want that. It's kind of it like pops up in my head, changing majors halfway through college. And so it's I believe it's the same principle, just even earlier. And so I feel like that's even more stress on the student, just because it takes up from their personal time, from homework, whatever the case may be, and it's something that they're not actually truly passionate about. And so it's not so important to figure out what every student in school wants to do right away, but for the students that already and that they do know in their intuition what they're going to do, all right, let's do this for them. And the students that are still figuring out, let them figure it out. Figure out how you can help them to maybe figure it out, if they need time, if they need ideas, motivation, whatever the case may be.
So what I'm hearing is that you need able support with setting long-term goals, but with the opportunities for career exploration and the freedom to, if that goal changes, to feel supported in that decision, and then help provide resources for that change in long-term goal. So we want long-term goal planning, but we also want to be able to allow you to dabble in stuff and not just track you off to be an accountant or whatever, but allow you opportunities to experience different things.
Yeah, and precisely. And like how I said, you know, we're young, that there's just so many chemicals going through our brain that it's kind of like your exploration phase of life. I'd like to think about it that way. And so figuring out your career and basically what you're going to do for the rest of your life or until you retire is a really major part of your life, you know, like it's literally your career. And so I think it's important that that teachers figure out that the student is having what is actually right for them, and not just trying to give them a career and be like, all right, well, so you like math, all right, let's get this on for you, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, just because the kid's good at math doesn't mean they want to be an accountant, right?
Right.
All right. Okay, so let's go. Olivia, what do you think is the most pressing issue to prepare young people for the big wide world?
Honestly, I think kind of like bridging the gap between being a high school student, being a teenager, and going into young adulthood and having to face how the world actually works. Like it's harsh, it's brutal. I've seen a lot of people really get stressed. And going back to what Grace is saying, like gifted students have a lot of they have a higher chance like dropping out, for example. Like that's concerning. I mean, we have to support every student. We have to support gifted students and being able to take the skills they've learned in high school, maybe not the exact ones, but being able to like critically think and being able to problem solve. We have to find a way to really transmit them into the real world, how these are actually applied, how you can use these skills that you had to learn for like a math class or for a composition class, and be able to survive and be able to like forge your path and find your way through. Like, I think that's very important. And I think that's where a lot of education systems, especially American education system, I think it really falls flat there. And yeah, I think that's something I've found I kind of need to work more on before I really go off to college. But yeah, I think that's important.
We'll get on that. Yeah. Let's go, Dana. Dana, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that this may be a little broad, but I think that the entire education system in general is very much based on pretty much a numbers game, to where literally every student is quantified into either like their GPA or their class rank, to where these students are like pitted against each other and are basically like sacrificing like personal time or like time spent with family or friends or on extracurriculars to gain like a 0.01 increase in GPA from taking an extra AP class. And so I think that with gifted students, especially, that's a pitfall that so many of us can fall into, just because from a young age, we're pushed to strive. And a lot of us mistake that for basically like overworking ourselves. And I really think that even though that is an individual choice that students can make, that the education system itself is at fault for basically having an entire system where students have to do this in order to succeed or to get into college. I basically had this one calc teacher last year where he wouldn't grade us based on our test scores, but rather what he put into the grade book was basically our demonstrated progress on how much we understood the concepts and how much desire we learned or desire we showed to basically improve. And I think that that kind of a system where it's less based on quantifiable aspects or like reducing students into numbers, but rather like placing a real emphasis on learning for the sake of learning, is more of a mindset shift that not only like the gifted program, but also just the entire education system in general can turn more towards too.
So many nodded heads. Look at that. Good points, Dana. I appreciate that. And I think, I think the question was targeted as kind of like, what is the most pressing need for all of you? I think the gifted students is definitely the microcosm we're looking at, but I think you have some great points. Okay, Kaya, last but not least.
I think that our school system really just needs to focus on individuality and encouraging individuality, because I feel like with the structure of a normal school setting, you're put in these classes from this time to this time, you're going to learn this thing with everybody else around you. And I feel like we're not allowed to explore what we want to explore. And this kind of ties into what Jared was saying about like, we're growing, we're exploring, and we don't know what we want to do with our lives once we've graduated and we've moved on from high school. So I think the school system needs to focus on what is it that this student wants, what is it the need of this student, rather than focusing on a whole on just the grades and the numbers like Dana was saying. An overall focus on creating an individual who is capable of being successful, but also capable of enjoying the life that they want to live.
You mean adulthood's not just about money? Making money? You want to enjoy your life too? Jared raised his hand. Jared, what would you like to share?
I know the question was concerning long-term goals, but I think it's very, very important of realizing what the present is for the student, because a little by myself, like I got diagnosed with like 3 mental disorders back in like February, I think. And so like every day feels like it's gonna be my last, and it has been like that for a year. And I like I said, I've changed career paths so many times, and I got to a point where like I don't think I'm gonna wake up tomorrow. And it's been like that for every day for a year. And so I think that it's very important that we keep the kids alive for their future and for long term, because if you have to focus on the short term, on what is happening at the moment, before you figure out what the long term plans are, because the kid might even go along with it, you know, going along with this long term goal, and the whole time they don't have the long term mentality.
Such great, that's a great point, that long-term mentality. I think a lot of kids, you know, are struggling with that, and not, especially with the way the world is kind of right now, feeling like we're just getting by day to day. And you want to talk about 3 years from now, what are you talking about, lady? So understanding that we need that support to like living in the present and being content and finding contentment and happiness in the present. And as Kaya says, finding happiness and contentment in our lives, and it's not just about like, I've got this career and I'm going to be, you know, a physicist or whatever, but that I want to know how and feel comfortable in the knowledge as an adult, and bridging that gap to adulthood, like Olivia suggested, of how do I find that space in my life to be successful and happy as well. So I feel schooled. I feel schooled. You guys shared so much with me, and I so much appreciate your candor. And so did anybody have anything else they wanted to share or add on before we go? That maybe you just, Grace looks like maybe she's thinking about saying something, but doesn't know. And Grace, feel free. We have a minute or two before we close out.
You know, all I was gonna say really is, I think a lot of the issues that we identified, particularly that Donna and Olivia identified with the education system, just really being like quantifiable, it's all about numbers. I really think that the education system is a microcosm for like the United States, and a lot of the issues that we see on like a global level, like blind party flag following, like you know, people that don't believe in science. I think a lot of that is attributable to the education system, and it definitely starts with fixing the education system.
Mic drop to Grace. And I thank you for sharing that last note. And thank you all for being so honest with us tonight and sharing your perspectives. I feel like this is what I love about being a gifted educator, is sitting in rooms with students just like you, who are so aware, but also have so articulate. And I really think, I appreciate that you are also involved, and I appreciate that your generation is one that is willing to dig their heels in and get involved in what's going on. We urge you to get involved for gifted kids in the state of Colorado and beyond, but also for all kids, because as you mentioned, that it's not just about the gifted kids, it's the education system as a whole, and you are part of that. And gosh, if this isn't a call for action, folks, it sounds like what we need is to build relationships with our students and to provide more support in those relationships with our students. And I have a list of things that I'm going to go out and try to take action on tomorrow because of you guys and because of your great ideas. So thank you for taking the time out tonight. We ran a little bit long. We were hoping to be done by 5:45, and I stole 15 minutes of your time. And I apologize, but I felt like it was so valuable, and I wanted to hear everything you had to say. You are all welcome to join us on our CAG meetings, so we'll send you information about that. But Dana and Kaya, thank you for being our first set of student liaisons that we will be having for CAG, and go out and share the good news with everybody else. I just loved hearing you guys talk tonight. Folks, I don't know, we've got somebody on the docket for next week. Let me just wrap that up really quick while we're waiting here. It looks like we have Leon Garber, When Neurodiversity Meets Existentialism. So some of the stuff you guys talked about tonight was about existential issues. Jared touched on them a bit too. And so next week, we're going to be talking about gifted neurodiversity and existentialism, existential thoughts. So I encourage you all to join us next week, but we also encourage our viewers this evening to join us. And thank you again for being here, Grace, Kaya, Olivia, Dana, and Jared. You are awesome. And have a great evening.